reason. This guy went through years and years.
Tom, 2 weeks in a row, man. I don't know what I'm going to do.
It's
I know. I said if I knew I was sitting here, I would have had the coach.
Some of it's very funny, too.
We're on, guys. Now, we were 5 minutes ahead, now we're 3 minutes behind again.
It's okay.
Okay, welcome back from our recess from non-public. First thing on the agenda, any revision of the agenda?
No, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, summary of non-public actions from the March 20th, 2013 non-public session. Mr. York made a motion to accept staff nominations for 2013-14 as presented. Mr. Miller seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mr. Miller made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of March 20th, 2013 as amended. Mr. York seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mr. Miller made a motion to unseal the non-public minutes of January 14th, 2013. Mr. York seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Any presentations or recognitions? Correspondence. We did have some correspondence from a parent regarding Challenge Day. She wrote the board, and I believe the SAU, commenting on how wonderful it was. I would read it, but it's quite long. Can we attach it to the minutes?
Yeah, email it to me.
Okay. But the general gist of it was she was writing to express a humongous thank you to the CHS for hosting Challenge Day for her kids. She felt that both of her kids, she had a junior and a freshman and a junior. She thought they both got a lot out of it, and it might have changed their outlook on life. And it's a great letter, and we'll attach it to the minutes. Any other correspondence?
I would suggest we redact
The names.
the names before we post it into the minutes, though. We did have some board members had correspondence on Common Core.
That's true, yes, we had
That half of the table.
a quorum of the board at the very least. That's
I will tell you that the person who sent that email does not have a problem with their names being attached to the email.
Okay.
So you don't have to retract it. I have their permission to actually read their email and their names from them, so you don't think you have to do that.
You can email it to me if you want me to attach it.
I'll send it right now.
Okay.
Anything else? No? Approval of draft minutes, 3/27 meeting.
I didn't see anything that was.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0. Community forum.
Oh, actually, there's something wrong.
Oh.
Uh-oh. What?
Kyle wasn't listed.
Oh, I fixed that, actually.
I don't need to be listed.
You do, you're at the table.
I'm sorry. I did fix it.
Okay, so they're approved with Kyle listed.
Thank you, Ted.
Community forum?
I have something, I don't know, I have a donation, I need to go up there and do it.
Or you do it from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have the check from the GMS PTO for their contribution for the basketball hoops and poles of $1,500.
Excellent.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation from the PTO with much thanks. Many thanks. Whatever
Make a
thanks.
second.
Do we need any discussion on this?
Do you want me to hold this till later, Steve, till tomorrow?
Do we know when we're putting the basketball hoops in?
I asked Matt to get together with Scott and Dave just to finalize the location of them. And they were talking about getting 2 regular height and 2 lower height for the younger kids. What I asked was if there's any way they can position them so that the 2 regular heights are more or less across from each other, even though it would be a longer distance, because we don't want it in the middle, and that's what they were looking at. But I gave them the okay to place the order based on the money.
When I was in grade school, we just had all half courts.
It'll probably end up being half courts, but
I would be very cautious about less than full height hoops, because you will have older kids that
Come visiting.
will come down and say, oh, I can do, look at this, I'm going to do a dunk contest, and pretty
that's a good
soon
point,
you're
yeah.
not going to have a rim.
End up kissing it.
Well, they're gonna destroy the rim, and then the kids
Easier
that
to
it's.
hang on?
Yeah, then you give me right back to square one.
Yeah, I'll give that feedback to Mr. Bennett. And
While I applaud, the idea that let's right-size it, if it was indoors, I would certainly agree with that, but given that it's outdoors and unsupervised, there could be
Yeah.
some. I didn't even think about somebody getting hurt, but Derek has a good point, too.
If you set the rim at about 10'4", it'll last forever.
Probably me that got hurt. I'd be there with my kids and, like, watch this, guys.
You guys saw Bo.
We're not talking about a 5-foot hoop, Derek, so.
Superintendent's comments.
Just the March enrollment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
numbers.
Did we get a vote on the, we didn't vote on the,
Oh, that's
did we?
true.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the donation from the PTO?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstained, or opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0. Sorry about that.
All right. Monthly enrollments are up from the start of the year. A significant percentage of those are in the pre-K program, so may or may not, project in for that level of increase for next year, but it's nice to know that they're holding steady. Given that there's a change for next year in the way that funding is derived, will be funded on our actual numbers. And so you remember back during budget season, we actually, the max, the least that you would get would be 95% of your prior year. And, given that the budget projections were suggesting that we were gonna lose somewhere around, 3% of our students, we said, well, I try to be on the safe side a little bit. But what we projected, I think, was pretty much flat line. And so we've gone up by about a dozen from the start of the year, from 1475 to 1487. The volatility of the school year and the volatility of the school year overall and the summer are just about equal to each other. So, there's a lot going on. A lot of people are hurting now, and so, people are in temporary positions or in some cases moving in or out. I suspect that we're gonna be in this pattern for a while. But so far, at least it's to our benefit, at least in terms of adequacy aid. The only other piece of note about the enrollment is that kindergarten is up a little bit, and first grade registrations are up to 68 as of end of March. So.
I'm a little surprised by kindergarten. We're almost up to this year's number already. 51 versus 55.
Yeah.
So question, why does the high school not provide us all the information? The other two schools provide us students in, students out.
It's there. Oh, there's into
CHS?
CHS.
I just saw students in.
Oh, it is just in, I'm sorry.
So
Don't know.
when we were on the front page with many other towns, on the Union Leader this past week, on dropouts, and our number is ticked from 2% to 3%, why are we not receiving the information when they've had a change of almost 12 students at CHS? They've added 6, but they're down 6, so that means they've had a dropout or move out of at least 12 students out of the high school.
I did receive a report, I believe, earlier this week from the guidance department.
Wasn't the Union Leader this
So it
week?
may not have made
What? Wasn't the
made the
Union Leader?
package.
If not, maybe the end of last week. It was since our last meeting.
No,
So
it was sent on Monday, and all it has in is a transferred in report and the monthly enrollment report. It doesn't have the transferred out report. I can check into that.
That tends to be one of the, again, things that with CHS is we get half the information, where we get, the other two schools provide us all the information.
And that's that. School board comments.
Did you guys read the article on Friday in the Hudson Litchfield News? Discussed the vote?
On the teacher contract?
Yep.
It's very nice to publish that after the vote.
Well, they probably would have discussed, probably would have published it earlier if we had told them what the consequences were, but it seemed that everybody was going to let the voters vote, but I think that I think the article is pretty accurate to what's going to occur for the taxpayers, so.
School board orientation, I understand it's normally, I don't remember it happening last year, but I guess normally the New Hampshire School Board Association sends a representative down here to go over, just recap our roles and stuff like that, and then also go over pending legislation and stuff like that. We've confirmed them for May 8th, was it?
May 8th.
And did they want to start early, or?
I told them we would get back to them with a time.
Okay.
But normally what we do is we kind of, I can't think of the word. What's the word I'm thinking of? Every year it's different, like NHSBA one
Alternate
year, and then
between-
attorney the next year, and then we alternate, thank you.
Okay.
We alternate every year.
I thought we had the attorney every year.
There was a couple of years we didn't. We had Ted Comstock instead,
Yeah, but I thought we still had
but we can.
Gordon or Mike come strictly from more of a recap of what transpired in the last year that we have to be careful of as we look into.
And that's usually a closed
Do that if
session.
you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we had the lawyer last year then. Maybe I do remember Gordon
Yeah.
being
We
here.
did have the lawyer last year.
Okay.
So,
But we'll have a full schedule, I'm guessing, that night anyway, so it might be beneficial to come in early for the NHSBA update.
okay. So we do want to have Ted Comstock, and I think it's Barrett Christina.
Actually, who's coming is Dean Mitchner for
Okay,
the
Dean Mitchner.
legislative, and Barrett Christina for the policy and legal.
Okay.
We should be careful about Dean Mitchner from the lobbying standpoint, I think.
Well, we have to segregate that fund in the books in order to be compliant with that.
Yes, and I just want to make sure that, A, we've done it, and then B, there's not an issue with
Him presenting, or?
that happening. I don't think there is,
Well,
but
he'd be giving us updates, and they'd be obviously biased towards NHSBA's positions, I'm assuming, so. Do you think a 6 o'clock starts early enough? Do you know how long do those usually go for?
probably want at least an hour.
An hour, so
I
5:30?
remember, Yeah. A lot of it, I know when we had Gordon in the past, he asked for questions that we might have in advance. And then he also provided a packet that was read-ahead that discussed, like, this was the change to a right-to-know law, this was this, this was this, this was new standards from Department of Ed, with a little summary. And then we had a chance in our packet to read ahead and then ask questions, and that helped a little bit focus the discussion.
So do we want a 6 to 7 meeting and then start the regular board meeting at?
Well, that has to be not public. I think that can be a non-public.
For the New Hampshire School Boards Association, it would be
It
public.
would be public.
Yeah, that can't be non-public.
But we could start public at 6.
Start probably
and
6,
do that
and
for the
that'll
first
go,
hour.
and do our regular.
And then that,
schedule
I
meeting.
mean, I know the one year we did it, there was actually, people had questions that came up during community forum, and Ted stuck around to ask. I know we've had him in for search discussions, which was non-public, but all the orientation was
Do you have all the things?
public session. The attorney would be a non-meeting,
No,
but
yeah. Okay, so let's plan on 6 o'clock on May 8th with NHSBA.
And are we going to have Gordon come in anytime around the same time in May?
It's
So
up to the
then-
board's wish. If you'd like us to contact him, we can do that.
I think it's good to have him come in, especially when you have, Brian's a new member that,
Maybe the following meeting. When's our next meeting in May? May 8th and then?
May 8th and then the 29th. Because of events that go on at CHS. So if you'd like to have
We
a
could-
short, you can have a short meeting in the interim in May if
yeah,
you'd
we can
like.
just do a short
Closed session.
meeting with the council that doesn't have a public session to follow. We've done that in the past.
15th or 22nd.
You can pick any day. I don't know what other people's schedule is. It doesn't have to be Wednesday, but.
I can find out his availability on both and then let the board know. And you can let me know what days you're available. How's that?
Sounds good.
That sounds good.
Thank you. Any more school board comments? Committee reports. Any committees meet?
It was supposed to be for, well, we were supposed to
Yeah.
be for homework, but that was postponed.
Postponed.
Do you have access to the PowerPoint?
Did you guys do a blizzard bag?
Wow, we didn't get a blizzard break.
They used them all up.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Anyone else meet? No? All right, technology update then.
Are you plugged in? I can move my laptop over. We do have an audience today, so I'll go around and we'll...
Ryan, I got it.
You got it from there? Okay. I'm going to very quickly take a look at, we're picking up on our conversation about the middle school programming and technology and budget for technology. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of where we are in the scheme of things. If you look at the PowerPoint on blended learning, it defines blended learning on the second slide as formal education in which a student learns at least in part through online delivery and in part at least in a supervised brick and mortar location. So apparently if it doesn't have brick and mortars, it's not a school. This is an interesting concept, but that's okay. The third slide gives a little bit more detail. One critical part of the definition of blended learning is that it involves some element of student control of time, place, path, or pace. This is a relatively recent addition to the definition of blended learning. Blended learning is something that for most schools is a transition that takes 3 to 5 years from where most schools are. In that typically the instruction is competency-based. To some extent, a lot of student choice and individualization or personalization, as it's usually referred to in education. And it does require some significant technology and from infrastructure. But it really does, I think, lead to the type of education that we've been describing. That's when I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning who came to do some work on my house at 7 in the morning. And at one point he asked me what I do. And I said, oh, I'm in education. And his comment, actually a very bright gentleman, he said, what do you do? And I said, I'm in education. So his response was, oh, you help people get smarter. And my response was, no, I'm a superintendent. But when I was a teacher, I'd like to think that that's what I was doing. But it was a very insightful comment, which really isn't, I think, a way that we typically think about what we do in schools. But clearly, with the move towards not just Common Core, but career and college ready, that ability to problem solve, to continue to learn, is where we're going. And the path there really seems to lead through technology and that personalization and individualization. When I started teaching, I was very good at teaching the students the stuff. And they did well on their tests, but I'm not sure I really did make them smarter or better learners. But I think I really changed the way I approached that. And that's where I think the move to blended learning is at. If you look at the next slide, it shows the brick and mortar on the left and the online learning on the right. And sandwiched in between is blended learning. Now, within the brick and mortar, you've got traditional instruction, and then you've got technology-rich instruction. That's kind of where we are now. We're moving from traditional instruction to technology-rich instruction and trying to create an infrastructure that will allow teachers to realistically plan to use that technology to
Now,
improve instruction.
excuse me for interrupting, but
It's
what
good.
comes to mind is with this blended learning and the technology instruction. Is this is going to be part of Litchfield's methodology of learning, and is this going to be a assigned by a teacher for a student to do, or is this just student-driven and they seek out?
Typically, if you look at blended learning, that by definition, it's, enrollment in some sort of course, it's driven by the teacher, it's credit-bearing, but there's some flexibility in one of those 4 areas that allows you to do something. This also, quite honestly, is 3 to 5 years out for us. Right now, this year was, the primary goal was to kind of stabilize the infrastructure. Moving forward, I know we sent that other handout, but it is driven by a curriculum. It could be driven by an extended learning opportunity, but typically it's some flexibility within student time. So for example, if you think of the high school as consisting of 90-minute blocks, 90-minute blocks can be difficult to teach in. And if what students become over time is quite expert at receiving information, we're really not doing the job of making them smarter that we need to do. So the question becomes, how do we use our time? How do we use our physical resources, right? In what role do we have teachers act? And how do we help kids become better learners in a way that helps meet those competencies and those expectations that we have of learning, while we're also improving their ability to learn? So the blended learning models are typically of one of those 4 types: cessation, rotation, and so on. When I was in Nashua, we sent some people down to School of One in New York City, which was a highly regarded model, where, at least in the math program, student came in every day and were literally on an individualized program. They could go see a teacher for help, they could go to their online module, they could log in and do this, and at the end of the day, the computer module literally updated and gave some direction as to where the student was the next day. So it was self-paced. If it took you 3 weeks to finish that unit, it took 3 weeks to finish the unit. If at the end you weren't able to do what you were supposed to do, then you're back on it again. So that would be a blended model, because some of the instruction is computer-based, right, while others are not. And it's self-paced in terms of, that is, if you get a 60, then, and you can't demonstrate the competencies, then you stay until you demonstrate the competencies, and it becomes a move on with when ready system. So that's where the model can lead to.
Well, it certainly would help with the whole differentiated instruction as well.
It is. And it's easier to do attached to credits at the high school level, but quite honestly, at some point, when you make the transition in late elementary from learning to read and learning to do fundamental math to reading to learn, and that piece, this can be really crucial, because if a student gets 3/4 of a year of growth when they're in grade 5, then typically they move on anyway, even though they're clearly not ready if they didn't get 25% of the growth that they should have, which means if they didn't get 25% of the growth this year, how are they going to make 1 1/4 growth the next year? They're more likely to make less than 75% the next year. So how do you make that transition is what most of the folks in the country are working on. The state board is in their draft minimum standards for public school approval talking about K through 8 competencies and taking out the references to credits in high school in terms of graduation, saying basically you need to, if the draft goes through as it's written now, you just have to demonstrate all of the district high school graduation competencies. And if you want to organize instruction around credits, okay, that's allowable, but it's not mandated or necessary. So that's where our state board is going. The ILN group that I sit on and have been to last May and this February, those are the 10 states in the country who are working on competency-based models, and competency-based models fit into this model relatively well. Now, will we get there in 3 years? I would be surprised. I think it's more like 5 years out. And the main thing is, as you move forward with these models, from my perspective, you need to use the technology in such a way that it maintains the cost, the existing cost. It can't be all the other costs we have existing, and then a significant technology cost on top of that. And that there are some ways of doing that. But it means students being more independent and having areas where students can go to do the computer-based piece. And if you read the detail of that bigger document. It actually gives you some of that. We can spend more time on it now. But headed in this direction, you know, the board and we could decide that, you know what, we may want to really just focus on getting very good at technology-rich instruction and performance assessments, and only if some students will be involved in blended learning. All right? I think at some point in time, you have to make that transition, because it'll help kids make that
Do we have
switch
some-
to being better learners, basically.
Do we have some real-life history in that?
There are some. Actually, that document that that this is taken from actually gives sample schools for each of these models. Now, quite honestly, School of One was touted as a great thing, and so we sent people from Nashua down to see it, and people came back and basically said, it wasn't so good. So there is some good stuff happening, but quite honestly, you know, people who are in true blended learning right now are in alternative schools, they're in charter schools, and it's really not mainstream. People who are getting up to that now are starting to get some significant improvements. When I was at the superintendent's conference, there was a panel of superintendents who talked about making that transition and how it had gone and what the key pieces were in terms of making that switch, and then going from, you know, modest growth to really ratcheting up students' growth and achievement. And, you know, they talked about the capacity issues and how they managed to do that without impacting budget and that sort of thing. So for me, it was very helpful.
I have to say that, you know, while this sounds good and everything, I mean, right off the top of my head, I tend to not like to experiment with our kids. I'd rather have real-life situations where people can prove that it actually works.
The reality is, we're behind the curve. In some cases, that's a bad thing because we're still rebuilding our technology infrastructure, but in some ways, it's a safe place to be because you can let other people make the crucial mistakes and be in that second version.
There's nothing wrong with that.
When I started teaching online, the institution that I was teaching at never used the most current version of Blackboard because they were always fixing bugs with it. And so they went with one generation older, a little bit less functionality, but it was a reliable platform. And, you know, that's not a bad philosophy, quite honestly. I agree with you in terms of...
That's been my life philosophy with my own kids, so I would feel that way about other people's as well.
I think with most processes and methodologies, there's never any one that fits the bill either. It's nice to kind of look what other people are doing and kind of take the pieces that you
Yeah,
think would
and
work
kind
good
of
for your
learn from their
concept.
mistakes and say, you know what, this kind of works well, but let's not put that in place.
It wouldn't work here because of
Yeah.
X, Y, Z reason type of thing.
The other very brief, and I said I'd be even briefer on this next one, the transition from student information systems to 21st century learning models. Kyle, if you can pull that one up. So that, no, the other document. Should have been in the same email.
Completely different document.
It's actually a PowerPoint,
Yeah, it's actually the PowerPoint.
not a
Oh, it's
PDF.
the PowerPoint, all right.
It's the one that's entitled.
You want me to project?
SIS.
I got it.
Wasting time.
Should figure it out.
If we could go to,
Our second screen down.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Come on.
the second slide. This is from a PowerPoint that Two Revolutions, a consulting firm that works with the Department of Education, presented at the ILN workshops that I was at in San Diego. And it follows the trajectory of technology as it's used in the management of competency-based instruction. And it starts at the year 2000 and says around 2000 is when we started with electronic learning environments. In fact, I started teaching using WebCT, fully online courses, in 2000, 2001. Then we got into things referred to as learning management systems. Now, we don't have a learning management system. The best known example of that would be Blackboard, which bought out WebCT, who was their big competition. And that's used by the majority of universities. We currently have a student information system. So it houses information about students, registration, birth dates, addresses, contact information, grades, courses, schedules. But in terms of teacher use, the student information system is something they take attendance on, basically, and that's about it. Over the last 5 years, there's been a tremendous increase in the functionality and what you're getting is the merging of 3 functions: the student information system, the learning management system, and data systems. And so X2, which is used in X2's Aspen, they were bought out by Follett, has all 3 capabilities for essentially $2 more a student. There's a learning management system, there's a parent portal system, and there's some capability to import and use data. If a teacher wants to see a student's IEP, you click on the button, the IEP comes up. Right now, teachers would have to log into multiple systems, as many as 3 or 4 different systems, in order to access that range of information. So if you look at go down to the very last slide, second last slide, assessing CBE, curriculum-based education relevant solutions, against 60-plus key functions under learning management systems, student information systems, and assessment functions. If you ticked off what our existing student information system can do, you wouldn't be hitting on very many of those. Now, those 60-plus functions won't be in one platform, probably based on our conversation with Brian Setzer, Kyle and Steve, I think he was guessing 3 years out to really be there. At this point in time, we have an archaic system that is built on a system that was out of date many years ago, and it's not even a relational database. If you look back to that second slide and that graph, if you placed our student information system on there, our current 2013 student information system on there, we're somewhere in the 1990s, probably the mid-1990s in terms of the functionality that we have. So we do have some people dabbling with learning management systems. Moodle is a free piece of software that you can use, or if you want to have somebody host it, you can pay some money to have them host it. It's a learning management system. Robin Corbeil uses Edmodo, which is both a learning management system. She has her students and herself as a teacher, and they can share information and email in assignments and all that sort of thing, and it's essentially free, although Pearson just bought it out, strangely enough. They also bought PowerSchool, so they're headed towards a product which is going to be a multi-platform piece. But Edmodo actually allows networking within Edmodo sites, so you can share curriculum, you can share assessments, you can share that sort of thing. So it's about, where you look at the blended and social learning environments put together. So we have a small number of people in the district who are working and functioning in this area, but they've done it essentially on their own and with technology that doesn't support it especially well. So.
The school was built in 2000. How do we have a SIS from 1990s?
You brought it with you from Hudson.
Oh, okay.
And you couldn't have anything earlier than 2000, Derek.
Well, the other schools use it as well. So Griffin and the middle school were using it prior to that.
So are we looking at this because we need to come up to speed for Common Core?
No. Common Core is basically a vehicle to try and help develop students who are good learners and who are career and college ready. This is the sort of one-stop shopping, the delivery mechanism for blended learning. It's got your learning management system there, it's got your grades, and as we move forward, doing it in a competency-based environment is really important. Right now, we basically have to trick our student information system into producing a report that looks like a competency report card.
Well, one thing that bothers me on here is the cloud server. I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of it.
Neither am I, quite honestly. It's not my slide, but
And I don't think you have to do everything. You have to pick, I think, what's important for your district. Because like Dr. Harkin said, you won't find a package that has all of this. You probably won't find or you may not like a package that has all of the student information service stuff. You may like one, or you might not be able to afford one
Well,
that has
I'm just
everything.
thinking, we ain't gonna be able to afford this.
But somewhere there's a ranking of important features. I mean, we always say, when we look at software, you list your requirements from top to bottom, and then you draw the line where your budget is. And if you don't like what falls off, you gotta switch things around. I mean, you would do the same with a feature list when you're trying to buy a package, I would guess.
and
Really, what Dr. Cochran was trying to drive home was that if you were to take those 60 or so requirements or functions of a system and look at what we have today, half dozen maybe. So percentage-wise, you're pretty far down there.
The roadmap has this
there's a parallel there
2
between.
years out, right? Like,
Oh, at
I think you're
least.
assessing this next year.
Well,
and
what we're
then-
looking at was, we're doing the needs assessment this year.
Okay.
Next year would be to try and identify a product, but it's really not going to be the final product. It's going to be something that'll bridge us to X number of years out. So what Mr. Miller described is absolutely smack on. So what's out there? We can try to get into the most advanced system for September of 2015, knowing that that things are evolving, knowing that we want to be on a blended platform down the road. Does that mean that we buy into Moodle? Or are we better off trying to give people PD and get as many people into Edmodo as possible, so that they're learning to teach in a slightly different way? A lot of it is teacher-directed. The flipped classroom is based on the notion that, well, when you're doing your homework, it's really, what it does is it flips what we've traditionally done as homework, and what we've traditionally done is in classroom. So instead of going home and practicing on your own, you go home and watch the video, do the reading, do the whatever, then come to class and do your small group
So
work.
is school just gonna be an hour long? Do we just?
Well, see, but there's some really good implications here for
Save
how
on
we use
heat.
our time. Right? So, and what we're finding is that model is working very well. There are some people who say, well, but you're pandering to kids who have a short attention span. At the same point in time, what we want to produce is kids who can operate in an environment, and learn in an environment that looks more like our current professional work that we do, rather than an industrial model.
But in looking at this, are we kind of getting ahead of ourselves if we haven't even actually gone through the steps to look at the whole blending and how that would operate here?
Well, there's a law
This could
passed.
all change in 2
Well,
years.
there's a law that was passed in 2004 and 2005 that Litchfield has decided to ignore for 8 years, that said that we would have this up and running 8 years ago. So,
But if we put this all into place and we don't have this whole blended thing going on, then we did it for nothing.
no, we,
There's actually, at the university level, this has been going on for a significant period of time. So the model of instruction, the model of learning and assessing, all that, is pretty robust at the higher ed level. Moving it down to K to 12 in an environment like that, then there are some adjustments, and doing it in a competency-based environment. But the model itself is pretty well proven. There's a fair amount of research on it.
the fact is, we can drag our feet all we want. It just means that every year, another set of 100 or 110 students go out into the workplace, into whatever it is, whether it be college or military or whatever it is they're doing, and that we're not preparing them for what is the reality out there. The reality is that we are a computer-driven, phone-driven, iPad-driven society, and we need to be able to get our students up to that, and we need to be able to get them used to it down at GMS. We need to have them at LMS actually doing PowerPoint presentations and stuff for their various classes, and practical applications when they're into their high school, because if they're not, then everybody else is. And, you know, we've played around for 3 or 4 years that I've been on the board with patchwork on our technology, with donations of computers that are 4 or 5 years old, that when we get them, and now they're 8 years old, instead of stepping up and spending the small amount of dollars that it is out of our budget.
I wouldn't call it small.
Sure it is. It's
I wouldn't.
less than 1% of our budget. So it's very small
Your
dollars.
version of small is different from
Well,
mine.
well,
But-
well, I'm looking in perspective of what our budget is, Trish. Our budget's a $21 million budget, and we're looking at $100,000.
But you're missing my point. My point
No,
is.
your point was that it's a lot of money, and I'm telling you it's not.
No, my point is, have we really looked at the whole situation with the blended learning? Is that going to work in this environment? Have we checked out other environments where they have it and have been successful with it? And evaluated whether that will be good for here, before going into all this?
Steve
Well,
has something.
here's the thing. The whole-
I don't want to use our kids as guinea pigs, is what I'm saying.
It's not a guinea pig.
should
That's
be in
like saying, Trish, do you use a computer at your work?
Yes, I do.
Okay, were the last person at your place of employment that ever used a computer?
So
Did
that-
everybody else in the world have a computer before your company did?
You know what, I didn't grow up in a computer school either.
I understand it, but we are there now, and we can't continue to say
I'm not saying.
we need to wait and
Todd,
wait and wait,
you're
Trish.
getting the whole thing
Well,
wrong.
I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
Right, I'm just saying, I'm not saying no to this.
Steve's
I'm
waiting
saying, are we
patiently.
putting the cart before the horse? That's all.
Can I interject? Well, let Steve interject before I do.
Okay. Trish, I understand your concerns about the blended learning and 60 features. We're not putting the cart before the horse. The fact of the matter is we have an antiquated system. Kyle and I brought in the vendor. They cannot expand it. There are open interfaces being published now, working on, that's going to get all of these things integrated when blended learning is there. Whatever product we implement is committed to those interfaces, and the ones that the consultant is looking at, they're all committed. This isn't putting the cart before the horse. This is actually getting us a base so that when the horse comes, we actually can get on it. So I would not recommend you delay any decision on a new student information system until you figure out what blended learning is. You have to start making that move, because even our student information system isn't providing the teachers the information they need to do the job today.
Well, I understand that, and obviously, we need to have information for the teachers. I understand that part. I'm just concerned that we're gonna end up getting this fancy pants thing that possibly we might not use. I'm not saying we won't ever use. I'm saying possibly we won't use it, and so we could have bought something that was less expensive for that.
Well,
Call me
act-
cheap,
act-
John, I'm sorry, I am.
Actually, this is where I interject. Actually, I would say that that's actually not true at all, in the following sense. The technology required for good, if you go back to that blended model, it says you've got traditional instruction and technology-enhanced instruction, right? Good, effective technology-enhanced instruction, supporting it in a traditional classroom environment. It's the same basic technology. It's just used in a different way. It gives that personalization piece. Committing to do one well doesn't mean that you're spending any more money, and it doesn't mean you have to go to that next step.
I think something that Steve said was key, because we're committing to this now, but blended learning in 2 or 3 years, and in 2 or 3 years,
If this is gonna be the same cost, no matter which way we go, all right, fine.
It
I'm sure
is.
it's modular, where you buy the
Except I don't like the
curriculum.
cloud
So
thing.
Trish, I guess the point is, what's here tonight is the hardware that will allow the application that has the feature set to execute. If we went and bought this today, I'm 95% certain it wouldn't run on the hardware that we're running our current student information
Speaking of feature
system.
sets, 3 or 4 years from now, the feature sets we want 3 or 4 years now don't exist today. So you buy a system that is upgradable and extendable, and
The
today
big-
it's Moodle and Edmodo, but 5 years from now, it's something completely different. You have to make sure
Yeah.
the system integrates with what it needs
The
to
biggest
do.
problem that we have with our system today, and the reason that it has to go, is that it's all closed. It doesn't function on any type of industry
Proprietary.
platform. There's no way to integrate it with anything else. And so anything that you replace it with isn't gonna do every one of these functions. It's probably gonna take a couple systems or a couple different modules, depending on what it is when we get there. But right now, we're dead-ended, essentially. And any system that you're gonna wanna get into is gonna, you wanna be able to extend that to have these functions as an option. All you're doing is looking at options.
And the other thing is, to some extent, because of where we are in the budget process, we have a 5-year plan that we didn't execute year 1 and year 2. So we're in a mode where we got, money from the plan, and I told you folks, and I told the budget committee that we would do a quick rework, try to get some priorities established, and then pull together back that district committee to move forward with a shared vision and some planning, and talk about where we are in this trajectory and what makes sense as a next step and that sort of thing. So to some extent, what we're talking about here is ahead of the plan, other than very specifically the piece about the grade 8 program, which really is the major piece tonight. We need if we're going to do this for next year, we need to vote tonight to approve the program and to approve the $48,500 of funding, which would do a couple of things. It would allow us to get the server in place, and it will also fund the licenses for the technology staff to start working on the virtualization of the thin clients. And if we don't get started on that now, it won't be able to be in place for September. So that's where we are with that. Now, regardless of whether we do thin clients or not, if we do this course, we pretty much need a lab for it to function the way it is. In terms of cost, one of the things that we're trying to do is do this in a thoughtful way, knowing that if we have X amount of dollars to spend on technology, we have to spend every dollar in the best way possible. So when we talk about thin clients, why thin clients instead of laptops? Why thin clients instead of regular standalone PCs, right? And the board and the budget committee, I think, has been supportive of the movement towards thin clients, and especially the budget committee, because they're relatively familiar. It's essentially server-based computing, and what it allows you to do is invest in a server. If you think of the useful life of a laptop, it's probably in the range of 3 to 4 years. We forecast for a cost, including warranty, of about $1,200 for a device that's going to last 3 or 4 years. So that's $300 to $400 a computer a year. The cost that we estimate for a PC is $900. Well, that's significantly less. And the PC tends to last longer because it's more upgradable. Extend that same model further and you end up at thin client. Thin client allows more computing capacity. And instead of, replacing 12 different power supplies when they fail individually or whatever, you can extend the useful life of the computer for minimal costs. So in fact, the useful life of the computer gets extended. So if you could, with a minimal investment in the server, go from a laptop lifespan of 3 to 4 years to a desktop of 5 to 6, to, at this point in time, we're seeing people who are getting 7, 8 years out of server-based computing for essentially the same dollar up front. It also minimizes the cost of personnel because you don't have to put new software on 25 labs in a computer times X number of labs. You simply update the virtualization and push it out to the machines. So it's the most cost-effective. It's the same platform that supports across everything from technology enhanced to something that gets closer to blended learning, and it supports the research writing, research piece, presentation piece that we think is so important for our kids moving into high school. So that's the rationale behind this. There are some things that one-to-one laptop computing provides that other environments don't. And so we need a mix of that in there as well. So, but all things being equal, you do everything that you can with something that does the function and does it cheaply and does it well. And then if you have to pay more for a particular function, like one-to-one laptop amount, you buy the least amount that you actually need, right? and you try to, also over time, try to get it level funded. So that's the philosophy behind this. If we put in the lab to support the grade 8 program, we need about $15,000 in infrastructure. The machines give off heat, so you have to usually air condition. They need extra wiring. And it would be about $12,000 for if you look at the budget document that I sent you, about $12,000 for furniture, one-time cost. The question, one of the questions that Dennis had was, for example, why the significant difference? The 27 PCs that are TC, which stands for thin client, 3-year lease is only $3,700. That's because all it addresses is the thin client unit, because the server that we're purchasing for that amount of price, we think can handle easily 70 thin clients. So there was 54 licenses purchased in that bundle for the 48.5. So that's the server and the first 54 licenses. So for the thin clients themselves, the cost is relatively low, because that 48.5 covers off the licenses that are needed in the initial setup of the machine, which has to be done this year. So I think we've been very thoughtful about this. I think I do understand your concern. This is not a commitment to some model 3 to 5 years down the road. It is a commitment to give students and teachers the tools that they need for highly effective technology-enhanced learning in the existing model that we have now. And at some point down the road, we can make whatever that next decision is. So it's not a commitment to anything past the good use of functioning technology, which really we lack at this point in time. I mean,
One question I'm wondering, because we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, is about doing wireless. That was kind of brushed aside as not being, I'm wondering why. That seems...
Thin clients don't generally run wirelessly because there's a heavier bandwidth requirement. So in a conventional computer, you have a bunch of processing done right here. On a thin client, all the processing is being done by the server, so you need a bigger pipe back into that server than you do with this, where you're just opening documents.
and quite honestly, we've spent a lot of, if you look at that 3-year plan, what we're doing this year and the next 2, the wireless networks for 3 buildings is something that we really focused on. One of the reasons is that we now have a policy that is a bring your own device. So students can log into the guest network and start to bring their own devices and use it, so we get more and more kids using the technology. Quite frankly, I don't see a college kid who isn't on a computer, and I don't see a high school kid here who is. That transition is something that the existing wireless structure that we have, that we put into place, and the policy allows. But the problem is, there's no real reason to bring it, because there's nothing for me to download, because there's no learning management system that allows me to access the handouts, to email the teacher. I mean, we currently don't even have email accounts for our students in the district. That's how low the level of functionality is. So they're using, Robin, do you generate Gmail accounts or something for your students?
I do not. I have to find resources that don't require them, or a lot of times what I do, like if I'm doing Prezi, I create an account under my email address, my school email address, and then I just trust the students. We're all going to use the same account. I'm going to give you the password. You have, rights to make changes to every kid's Prezi if you wanted to, but if you do, we can't use this technology. And I've never had a kid make a change to another person's Prezi. They want to use the technology, and you allow them to use it to show what they know. They use it responsibly.
So, and with respect to the question of isn't this a lot of technology, and the answer is yes. Do we absolutely have to have all of it? That's a good conversation. It is a lot. But I think what you have to understand is almost everything that's out there, if you remember that pie chart that shows how old they're, in LMS, after Robin's lab, which is how many years old?
At least 3, 4.
4 years old?
4 years.
That's the newest piece of equipment in the building. The laptop carts are pretty much,
They're dead.
5 to
They're
7.
bricks.
they were donated.
You have one cart that's about 5. You have another cart that was donated at 4. We've had at 2. That's 6.
I mean, basically,
The last card is 7 years
we're
old.
looking at machines that struggle to run the operating system required to run the software.
We just did one that did updates, and now the hard drive shows up as red because it updated on Tuesday, and they can almost no longer function. The teacher that was currently trying to use them has come to me like 3 or 4 times in the last 2 days and saying, I don't know what to do, they won't function anymore. Just because of the updates that we do every week, they've just gotten to the point where they can't do it anymore.
So if you look at the model and how this next piece, which is the transition to technology-enhanced traditional instruction, if you think of the Robbins Lab, she would be teaching grades 5, 6, 7. Every class would have a trimester with her to learn fundamentals of the computer, but that also means that teachers in social studies and science or math or language arts who want to do a research project that involves computers need access to the computers. Well, the grade 8 teacher has this new course. All the grade 8 teachers know that the students have access to that, but now we need some technology for them to access. And they need to be able to do it in their own, in the English room or so that's where the 2 laptop cards comes in. So now we have 2 teachers teaching out of labs, and then all of the other teachers in the building. So that's Robin, who's a unified arts teacher. That means that Robin's lab is used up as unified arts. We have essentially 20 classes of academic students with 2 laptops, two class sets of laptops if this is purchased. So while it sounds like a lot of technology, you have to understand there's really no other functional technology there. And it would mean that students would access this about 1/10 of the time. But here's the problem. We don't want them accessing it one day, on Monday this week, and then 2 weeks down the road. If Robin is working with the kids in grade 7 and working with Audra McCollum on a social studies project, these kids are going to be working intensively over a 2 to 3 week period, and then the laptops will rotate to the science teacher who's working with, and so on. So what you end up with is each of these teachers having time to augment their classes, and over the next couple of years, build in some technology-enhanced pieces that allow the use of multimedia, that allow the use of presentation software, and we do it in a thoughtful way. So you've got this backbone of Robin at 5, 6, and 7, and this course at 8 being the core backbone that delivers how to use the technology, how to access websites, how to evaluate websites, and then that becomes deployed by the other teachers with the laptops. And this is kind of the minimum that we need at the middle school in order to make that happen in the next 2 to 3 year period. And the unfortunate thing is we haven't had those conversations except with a handful of people. And that if we get the decisions that we need tonight, then we can start to have those broader conversations.
Can I just have you speak to the last slide on that PowerPoint? The competency framework, I think that's.
Oh,
that's last
yeah.
one.
The one with the multi-levels?
Has parents, student, teachers.
Oh, yeah. That essentially is the framework that shows how those multiple, somewhere 3 to 5 years down the road, the bleeding edge is going to be looking at a system that encompasses all of those things. So at this point in time, this is a vision. The leading company right now is probably Pearson at getting to this product. But
How would we be tied into the state and federal government, though?
well, if you look at the data systems, for example, if you look at the performance assessment, we have access to students' results on kneecap assessments, so that we can use it to analyze data to look at ways to improve instruction. So even if our math scores are going up, how are we doing in this strand versus that strand? How are we doing on open-ended questions versus that? So the ability to access this data, right now we have that data, right? But in order to make good use of it, we have to go to another system, we have to log on, we have to train people on this particular software, right? Or somebody like me or Julie has to generate the reports and give it to the teachers. So there's nothing there that doesn't exist already across multiple platforms.
This is Gardner's vision of the space?
This is the vision INACOL, the International Association for Online Learning. So what they're suggesting is in a competency-based environment, how does one do this? Quite honestly, the whole notion of grading reporting, we're at a pretty rudimentary stage in terms of, if you think of what it means to be a career and college ready and the components that go into that, in a non-competency-based system, you have a grade of a B- or a 78 or an 82. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the kid is brilliant but lazy and is a problem in the class, or it's a kid who really struggles with this academically but is really nice and does extra credit and gets a grade better than that? And as a student, unless you ask the teacher, as a parent, unless you ask the teacher what that means, you really don't know. Well, if you move to a competency-based program, then what you're doing is you should be basing it all on your summative assessment. So here's where you need to be by the end of this. Where are we? Are you competent or not? And here's what we mean by competent in this competency in this unit. And then you have to look at how we report that out so the student and the parent know exactly where this is. So right now, in a lot of situations, you get a grade for your attendance, you get a grade for homework, you get a grade for, so if you get all these soft points and you're not doing well academically, you can still get a decent grade. So where's clarity on our grading practice about what a B means, or what an 82 means, or what it means to be competent in Algebra 1? And what we're looking at doing over time is to be more specific about our grading practices and then on our reporting practices, so that parents can get a real idea of what the student's strengths and weaknesses are. And so, for example, some of the functionality of the parent portal. So X2's Aspen, you can go in as a parent and say, and I think I've mentioned this example before, all right, whenever the teacher enters a grade for my child, I want a notification. If it's not a B, if it's below a B+, I'll get an email notification saying, boom, a grade has been posted that meets your criteria. You can set whatever criteria you want, and you can set it to point to whatever email address that you want. You can check your students' attendance. You can check, you can email the teacher. You can look at the calendar for the course and say, you know what, you got a big test on Friday. What's going on? I haven't seen the study. So increasing that communication between parent, student, and teacher can all be built into it. Though that functionality is in more advanced student information systems now. It's not a true learning management system, but it has some of that functionality, but it has a pretty robust portal system that allows the student to log on, the parent to log on, the teacher to report. Instead of writing separate progress reports for IEPs, you can export information from the gradebook and email it to the parent, which is a time saver for the teacher, and the parent gets accurate information. So those are sort of the upgrades over time. Right? Some of that functionality, all the functionality that I just described has existed for at least the last 3 years. We'd be looking at doing it sometime in the next 3 years, if we move forward with the student information system.
All right, so say we approve all this.
We're not approving this tonight.
No, I'm just talking about the technology. At what point do we start assessing what are we going to have?
That was in the 3-year plan. I think it's next year's student information service.
So we would be
Next year
continually going over this and assessing?
Yeah. So right now, we're doing a needs assessment. We sent a survey all out to the people. We just got the survey results back, and we had our second or third conference call with the consultant that we get free from the Department of Education. It probably, if we were paying for it, it would have cost us more money than we could have afforded, but it's part of the new state system. And so I knew that Kyle had sent out a survey to the student information system users, and it came back, and I'm going, where's the teachers? And I was reminded, well, the teachers really only take attendance on the student information system. They don't have the other functionality to use. And I'm going, duh, of course, right? So that's kind of where we are.
Actually, your decision tonight does impact this. The plan looks to implement it in 2015. in order to get the detail the budget committee would demand, we would have to have a decision and cost in October. That's not going to happen. The goal is to hold that E-rate money whole, because that can be treated as unanticipated revenues. So then in late next year, mid to late next year, once you've made a decision, that money can be used to fund the implementation.
Now, last week, you were talking about using E-rate money for this purchase that we're talking about this year, so
As a
how...
fallback,
Yeah.
if we end up with not enough money in the operating budget to cover it. So we would use E-rate as the contingency first, rather than going to the sped capital reserve.
If we used E-rate, it would essentially mean that we're going to take a year's worth of E-rate rebates that we would need to implement the student information system, and we would have to wait to accrue that money back again. So it pushes out the implementation of a more robust student information system a year. So that's why, and I didn't explain that piece well. So we had asked you to increase the 13-14 operating budget in the area of technology by about $42,000, right, which was done. And then the next board meeting, we talked about the approval of the 48.5, which would be out of this year's, which if we don't get it out of this year's budget, we can't get done in time to offer the new course. And when I explained it, I explained it in two different ways, and with not a lot of clarity, I might add. So there's two things, and they're very independent. One, we need to approve the program. Two, we can only run the program if we approve the 48.5. The more robust spending, you know, and Mr. Miller asked a very good and very timely question. So if we fund the 48.5 out of this year, then what are we going to do with that 42,000? So the handout on what we would do with it would be the answer to the question, you know, that he posed. Now, here's the other thing. Everything there, except the one-time purchases for lab infrastructure, is all in a 3-year lease. So it sounds like this is an awful lot of stuff to roll out in 1 year. But the reality is, nothing else is going to roll out in the next 2 years because that money is tied up for 3 years. So it's not like every year we're going to pump this in.
Is that a promise,
This is
Brian?
it.
Is that a promise?
No, it's not.
I mean, quite honestly,
Based on your statement, you only have to worry about one more year.
You know, the technology, everything that we do today, in 3 years, we may have to redo with something totally different. Because that's just.
That's the way it
That's
is.
just the way it is.
Yes.
So, I mean, so you're having to, you know, other than the fact that every computer, other than the ones we bought in the last 2 years are on their deathbed, are servers. I mean, we've spent $42,000 on hardware for right-to-know storage. That we could have very easily have already done this. Instead, we used it for storage space because somebody needed to check all the emails in the district.
Let's not get into
So I mean, Brian, do you need a motion?
If you let me just ask a couple of follow-up
You
questions.
can ask them after a motion also.
That's fine.
All right.
I want to thank Dr. Cochran and Kyle and Steve and whoever got the answers to the questions that I asked. And I purposely didn't send it to the entire board so we wouldn't trigger a discussion, but I understand the answer going back. I still have heartburn about buying 60 laptops for GMS to put 30 on a cart when our maximum class size looks like it's 21 next year.
Well, fourth grade is 25, I think, right? A little bit.
And they go up.
I think they're about 23.
119 is, I just looked at the enrollment, which was timely. It's going to be
Yeah.
somewhere from 90-something in
Yeah.
first grade to 106. If we have 5 teachers at every grade, assuming we don't keep the 6 in first
I
grade.
would guess, I know the laptops now are junk, I hear about it all the time. But I'm guessing the reason, and Kyle can probably speak to it, but the reason it's probably 30 is because at any given point in time, a teacher with a class of 23 goes to start it and 4 of them don't start for whatever reason, so they have.
They're brand new. And the 3-year warranty with the 3-year lease, the odds of 10% failing, then we need to look at a different vendor.
Someone
with
didn't plug them in right.
who
so
we're
they
buying
wouldn't be charged.
Yeah, I mean, there's a mirage of what
I
else?
understand, but we're gonna have 9 spares on the cart. Each cart, which is 18. That's,
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
stating it for
I
everybody.
think it's a fair
And-
question.
Valid point.
And so that's one of my questions is, do we need to buy 30? I don't want to walk in someday to a class and see 9 laptops
Here's-
sitting there not being used.
From a timing perspective, we put the budget in at that figure of when we were going to use the $42,000 to do all the thin client stuff. Then that was taken out, so we said if we do this lab, that we could push one set down. Then we got the BAE machines, that we said we were going to get 30. We actually got 60. By the time you get those working that you can, we've actually got 50. So do we actually now need 60? I think is a very valid question.
I don't know the answer. It just, when I look at it, what do we have on the carts now, 25 for GMS?
No, the cart there was 30,
Okay.
which is how that number originated. You could probably knock them down to 25 apiece
Also
and
realize that.
run safely.
How they're going to get used, instead of abused, in GMS is going to be quite different than the usage that you would expect at LMS or even CHS.
I understand,
So
again,
there
Be
may
surprised
be,
about
so
those
there
high
may
school
be
kids.
a few out getting warranty repair at any given time.
well, it sounds like we're buying next business day.
No, they're
We're not-
depots.
They're depots? Okay. My second question is, can we enter into a 3-year lease when it has not been approved by the voters?
It was approved, it's in the operating budget. The leases were in the operating
The
budget.
virtualization was cut from the operating budget, yet we're asking,
We're purchasing the server.
no, we have
Those are
Fif-
desktops.
54 thin clients on 3-year leases. We specifically said we cut virtualization from the budget
The
next year.
server. That 42,000 was the server. The desktop leases was approved in the budget.
So what about the 10 library PCs, thin clients that are a lease purchase in next year's budget?
The voters approved X amount of dollars to lease PCs.
And I think we're $3,000 over. Steve, you're not going to be here next year. So we're going to be sitting here, and somebody in the budget committee is going to say, the voters didn't approve that, you can't have that lease.
Well,
Order 28 on a cart.
Actually-
Get you under the
actually,
I'm trying to take a long view, because I know in 6 months, we're going to
Okay.
have a conversation.
Here's the thing, the budget committee said, you know, we're gonna fund everything in your 4 strategic goals, except this $42,000. And we do it regrettably and reluctantly, but we need to keep an eye on the tax rate. So I said, we will rework everything. We will try and do everything that we can do. Please understand, the old budget is gone, and we're gonna have to generate a new model. And they said, we get that. So it would be difficult, I mean, we can go back.
Get
and
it in
play the video.
writing, because
I-
everyone's going to forget.
Michelle did.
It's on video. And I've told the school board that several times since as well. But,
There were
you
2
know,
school board members actually sitting in the room when they were having that discussion.
That's fine. All I don't want to hear is, I don't see the line item for these leases, yet the district has entered into it without the voters approving the 3-year lease.
Yeah, the leases are a line item. If you want to be 100% pure, he can cut the desktop so that it's not.
I'm not saying to cut
Cut the
anything, I'm
laptops
just
down.
trying to ask the question so
That's a
everybody,
legitimate question.
if people vote yes, then they understand the possible ramifications.
Well, we don't
And-
want
And I
to
will
make
tell
it
you,
questionable.
the reason why, when Kyle and I were looking at what to cut, when the budget committee took that 42,000, there were 2 reasons why we picked the virtual server. One, because it was 42,000, and 2, I did not want to cut the lease line items because that would restrict any flexibility the board would have next year. So we kept the lease lines whole.
So, We-
We're not approving this tonight anyway, we're only approving the purchase of the server tonight, right?
well,
But
that's,
you-
But
okay.
it's tied to the
If
whole
you-
package.
You would
Choose
be,
one, you need to be
right.
approving
That's-
all. It's
yeah.
not like,
okay, but can I ask a question? We did get the budget passed, right? Which gave us a bottom dollar figure, which we then managed based on the 4 strategic goals that I identified. And We move money from budget line to budget line all the time.
I don't argue you can't do that, but you can't enter a lease without the voters approving it because it's a multi-year expenditure. Because we're going to add that to the default
Okay.
next year.
But in this case, as Steve's pointed out, I don't think if there are any leases there, first, I'm actually a proponent of purchasing and not pushing your money out. Because first of all, well, it allows for a relatively flat structure. Here's the cost of ownership, we got a 6-year life on these, we need this many machines, we're gonna buy this many, we're gonna rotate, and it's just a known amount every year. So if we need to be compliant with that, roll out fewer machines but in a purchase mode, I think it's quite honestly where I would prefer to go.
I think with the amount of machines we need to catch up to where we are, at least.
That's the advantage of.
And that was the reason I think the board originally directed us to move towards or leasing rather than purchasing, but I think we've also, after this lease, have kind of reached a critical mass that we may want to re-examine straight purchases rather than leases.
After this lease.
After this, yeah.
All
For
three of us
next
hate to
budget
pay
cycle.
interest to a financing company.
Can we do straight purchase for some and lease for the others? Is that not?
You won't get nearly as much.
Not with the funds that we have.
We can certainly stay well within the leases that are here. With this amount of money, we can move whatever we needed to a purchase
whatever's over.
within the amount of money that we're talking. It would mean rolling out less equipment, but more of it would be purchased up front, not entered to a lease. So
Yeah, just buy some of the thin clients.
it would mean that, for example, instead of rolling out the number of machines, we might have fewer machines at LMS, but we would have more purchased, which would then free up some monies to replace them the next year, which now means you've got more computers on a staggered system, so you don't end up with that big.
I personally prefer that model myself, but.
I do as well.
As
So
does-
if we can, if the board could vote on 2 motions tonight to approve the program and buy the server, we can come back with a revised set of expenditures that does not go outside the lease arrangement approved in the budget from last year.
Right.
I think that's pretty easy to do.
Steve, you know what budget that was in?
It would have been in.
This is the
which one are you looking at?
regular program.
It would be, it would be Student Support Services, 2225.
Were you gonna go over today too? How the new course is gonna work and stuff like that? Is that why Mr. Buckler is
Function
here?
2225.
How the new course is gonna work?
Thomas, in case you had any questions after the
No, that's
presentation last
staff's-
time.
I think, that's,
So what's gonna happen if, purchase
for
computers
the
this year,
staff support services, maybe.
and we're into the budget season next year, and we're doing the
Instructional
process,
staff services.
and we begin to get technology reduced again.
I'm beginning to get
Technology budget reduced again. I mean, this is, to me, this seems like you know, every time we try to get a step forward, we end up setting ourselves up at one point in time. I mean, if we have a plan, and we need that plan, and if we modify, as frustrated as I am not to pay the interest, you can't, again, we've been trying to kickstart the technology budget for 3 years. And there's a group of citizens that met as a budget committee that knew that. And yet, every year, it's the same conversation. Where's your plan? Of which 90% of them knew the plan, 90% of them knew the issues, and it just kept getting stalled and stalled. And I don't foresee that being any different this year through that process. So I think that we have to protect the students in the district as best we can with whatever decision we make that allows the process to continue for as many years as it takes to not start and stop and start and stop. Because every time you start and stop, it costs more money.
Well,
And all the interest
wasn't
that
that
we're
the
paying.
advantage of
Let's go
getting
back
the
and read that
operating budget
$42,000 line
approved?
item
Now
you
we
got.
have those line items in there.
Well, we have the line items, but if we don't enter the lease, they're not
Implement
guaranteed
virtual
to be there
desktop
next year.
environment for all.
Oh, is that your point? I'm
Computers,
sorry.
70 total.
Okay.
I mean,
Going to lease
PC
again.
with
I mean, I would like to think
repurpose
that
PCs as
when we
thin lines
presented
necessary.
that yes,
But that was a purchase,
but,
that
but at
wasn't
the
a
same
lease.
time, they can make the same determination that
Okay.
we need to
We
cut
don't have a lease of thin.
$42,000, and we're gonna take it out of,
Desktops.
you know, fixing one of the labs, and we're back,
Still a desktop.
you know,
However, the default
tech-
budget
Not
would still
leasing
have
the
it.
server.
I understand.
no, because it was a one-time purchase. So it wouldn't be in the default budget, it was a one-time purchase.
As part of the plan, though, I think it would be.
But I don't want, we shouldn't try to be relying on a default budget. We need to be relying on our budget and an adequate plan. And, you know, the key is setting the plan, having it in place so it's the same amount of dollars every year moving forward. You know, we had the town has their issue with the police cars and their leases and their purchases on that. And we seem to have that same issue with our technology and getting updated systems in each school on a timely basis and making that investment. I mean, and it is an investment. You know, whether it's $150,000 or $200,000 or $250,000 or $100,000, it has to be, we need to get to a number. And Kyle, that's where you and Steve, or you and the new BA and Dr. Carter, you guys have to come up with a plan that has a dollar amount that says, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. I mean, you gave us the information, but it wasn't a plan. A plan is, this is my 3 years. This is what we're gonna do, this is the cost we're gonna do it, this is how it looks like if we lease it, this is how it looks like if we purchase it, and this is how we're gonna go forward. Because if you present it and we can show it to the budget committee, because again, they're gonna want more detail in their plan, you know, in that
Oh, no question.
expectations,
I agree 100%.
then, you know, that,
Yep.
you know.
And I'm trying to give this in broad strokes, because quite honestly, it would be inappropriate and remiss for me to have a conversation with Robin and a conversation with Sean McDonough, and then say, here's the plan, folks, and circumvent the process for developing that 5-year plan. So, as I've said, we're ahead of that process, and I don't want to, you know, say that I have something, you know, laid out to that level of detail, because number one, it would be inappropriate. Number two, it would be inaccurate. Could we do it for the next board meeting? Could I develop a plan that would be my plan and then try and sell it to people instead of working with them to develop a plan? Yes, but I don't think it's the way to go. And I think that's why, partly why this is awkward, you know, because we have a time frame to meet to try and make this, I think, significant and important change for next year. If we could focus on those two votes, if there's not very many more questions, approval of the program and the budget required for the 48.5, then that gives us more time to have the other conversations. Because I think the board has pretty much agreed that this is a good thing, that we can fund it. And then if there are other concerns about leases versus this, I quite agree with you. And John's in the same place too. We need to find a way to get this level funded. First of all, so it doesn't, you know, move up and down and become a budget issue every year, so it's going to make the tax rate go up one year and down the next. The other thing is, if you really want teachers to do this and do it well and buy in, they need to know that the funding is going to be there. They're not going to do this great technology-enriched course in science, grade 7 science one year, and the next year the technology isn't going to be there. So if we can't do it with some expectation that teachers can buy into this and put in the time and the effort, the energy to develop this program, then we shouldn't do it at all, quite honestly.
Can you give a quick recap of what the new course is again? I know we went over it the first night, but it was a very, very long night, and I'm having trouble remembering some of it.
Tom, did you want to address the major components of that course? Where basically, I mean, I call it the RRW course, you know, reading, research, and writing. It really is a literacy course. It's computer-based. Students will learn how to do research. Most of that research will be internet-based. You know, do they understand what a search engine is? Do they understand what criteria are to try and look at whether or not this is a credible source? Do they know how to cite? Do they know how to read conflicting pieces of information and make sense of them? That really gets into the key components of making use of that literacy. Tom, I know you've had more conversations other than that initial framework that we sent out to folks. Are folks relatively happy with that as part of the major ideas? Where else
One
we
of the
want to
things we're
go?
looking at is, over the past 6 or 7 years, we've had a content reading class in the 8th grade. And that class it's literacy based in those content areas. And it's taught by the content teachers. What the Common Core puts an emphasis on is those literacy concepts embedded in content. So when we're talking about reading and writing in the area of mathematics, it really shouldn't be separated as, okay, this is reading and writing and mathematics as a separate class, and this is the math class. It should be embedded. So that's one thing we're doing by going away from a content reading model specifically as it is now. With this course now, there will be content literacy connected to those content areas, but that gap will be bridged by this technology teacher and this class. So there will be a lot of interdisciplinary things happening between this teacher and those content area teachers on the team.
So there'll be a new teacher that teaches class,
So,
but they're going to interact with science and math and English teachers?
So right now, in the 8th grade, for example, we have, well, it's a hard example because our team's set up right now is kind of, our numbers are kind of strange this year, but in the past with a 5-member team, we've had a language arts class, a content reading class, a math class, science and social studies. Instead of what has traditionally been content reading, we now have this tech-based literacy class.
So the advantage that which Tom spoke to last time again is that the teacher's contract requires, you know, 5 periods a day. So it's 4 in my content area, teaching math or science or social studies or English language arts, and then 1 doing content reading associated with it. Well, this course would pick up, one person would pick up the literacy in this computer-based piece, and that means that now I've got a teacher teaching 5 periods, and they're all the same academic subject. So I'm now focusing, all I'm doing is teaching math. That's what my degree is in, that's what my certification is in, that's the PD that I receive, and while there has been work put significant work put into the content reading to help people become better at teaching content reading in math and science and social studies, it's not really what they signed up for. And this does give that nexus to, you know, have that backbone between Robin and the grade 8 class to develop those core skills that would then move out into the content areas. So everybody teaches grade 7 social studies or grade 8 science, 1 subject, 1 focus, and that gives them the capacity to, I mean, now you're preparing for 1 class and 1 class only, whereas the other one is only 1 period a day, but it's also a separate preparation. Now you can take the preparation that you're doing on content reading and science and put it towards the tech integration.
So what does student schedule look like?
So an 8th grader would have the 5 classes that we just mentioned, 2 unified arts classes, and then their lunch. And then we also have an enrichment block, which is about 25 minutes long.
Okay.
Which is
So this class is one of those 5 classes?
one of the 5 core.
But, so part of the year would be focused on science, part of the year would be focused on, is that how it would work, or?
No, not necessarily. It would be a lot more, we wouldn't delineate it like that.
Okay.
Over the course of the year, I mean, they would be looking at the 8th grade the content that's covered in the 8th grade across those disciplines. And that's where, like Dr. Cochran said, that research-based component would be, it would be driven by the topics that are covered in the 8th grade.
Okay, so they look at what the other teachers are teaching
Yeah.
at the current time and try to integrate it with.
For example, in 8th grade, American history is the core social studies area. Physical science.
Okay. So they might be doing research in that class related to
It would be
American history
connected
for the time
to-
period they're studying at that.
Yeah, well, and it is, there's going to be that literacy component, so there may be a lot of what the Common Core requires is more non-fictional texts, and, which, you know, on a computer, you can access much more of that type of information, so.
I think we just need a motion to.
So I'll make a motion to approve the $48,500 purchase of the server out of this year's budget.
Second.
Do we need more discussion?
Well, I still want to discuss the funding of it,
Sorry.
because you said that if we have to use the SPED emergency funds, then it has to come out of where?
Right now, I am expecting an underspend in the budget of more than $50,000
In the entire budget,
in
not
the
SPED?
entire budget. So at this point, short of an emergency, like a boiler going, I don't expect to have to go into the SPED capital reserve. So I am comfortable in saying we can cover the $48,000 within the current operating budget. Should something happen, like a boiler goes, we would take that, I would come to the board and ask you to accept unanticipated revenues under the E-rate for the shortfall, rather than coming to you saying we need to get $48,000 out of the SPED capital reserve.
Okay, all right, that's...
Short of an emergency, we will underspend the budget. I mean, even SPED, although I shouldn't say this.
Don't.
I talked to Devin today. Even the surprises she was telling me today was not
Even
enough.
Carrie's phone, just so you know. She's a very optimistic person.
Leave your phone's ringing in your office. I can hear it.
His car's running.
Even Devin assured me that there wasn't going to be that big of an emergency that I had to worry about.
Put that in the minutes,
With
please.
only 3 minutes left.
No, I'm not committing to anything, because it'll be my bad luck.
7 kids will move in tomorrow.
So is the 48.5 for the server?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more?
And the 50 licenses.
Server and licenses, yeah.
Okay.
So, the leasing, we're just...
Well, we didn't vote yet.
We're gonna wait on that?
Well,
Or we're gonna-
I got a motion for
You're
that.
gonna motion that?
Yeah, I got a
'Cause I'm
motion
not
for it.
comfortable
I don't
with-
know that people will like what I'm going to motion, but I'm going to make a motion.
Well, the leasing is in next year's budget, though.
Well, I'm not comfortable if it's kind of borderline in what we're doing.
I got a motion.
Well, I don't want to vote on this without knowing that we're gonna change it.
Why would we change it?
You want me to withdraw? You want to go the other way?
Yes,
Or do you want to just table it?
we'll table it.
Is the board okay with, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking to
Table the motion that's before us right now.
Yes.
I'm fine tabling the motion if you guys want.
I think we should move forward and vote. So I will withdraw my second.
You will or won't?
I won't.
Well, we can still table,
That's true.
table it with. It's not a radical motion.
No, I understand. But again, we can continue to argue and stall all we want. The fact of the matter is. we need to find
It's
whatever,
not a stall,
and we
I'm
need
just
to move
making
forward.
sure that we're not
Stalling
doing
or
something that is not right for,
Again, the funding, no matter what we decide right now, how we're going to pay for it, until June 30th hits, we don't know. Because until June 30th and nothing occurs, then we know it's going to come out of the operating budget. No matter how we vote today, we know that's how it's going to be. We know the computers are going to be paid out of next year's budget, because that's where they're funded from. Nothing's going to change in the next 10 minutes to table any vote that's going to change that, because that's where it's at.
I hear what you're on. It's two different issues, really. Either way we're doing the program, how we change the leases next year is
Move
kind
on.
of irrelevant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Everybody looked at me.
I didn't hear Mike, I
I didn't hear
I
an
didn't
aye.
say anything. I'm good at this, aren't I?
You can abstain.
I'll abstain.
Motion
I want
passes
to know.
4001.
So my second motion is...
001, what's the second? 001.
Too many zeros. I'll make a motion to accept the revised purchases for the 2013, revised leases for the 2013-2014 budget, provided they don't exceed the dollar value of the leases approved by the voters.
Second that.
I realize that they approved X dollars if we need to buy X dollars of something other than what we thought. I think that's a much more palatable position versus being $10 or $30,000 over what the voters approved.
Any more
I agree.
discussion?
I'll second that.
He already did, but.
Oh, I'm
You can
sorry.
second.
John, you seconded it?
He was quick.
It's an easy one.
Are we agreeing on this?
I can't believe it. But I have heart palpitations.
We're going to switch sides. Yeah, we'll do that.
Any more
We gotta line this up first.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 507.
And I'll make a motion to accept the 8th grade program that we just
As
set
outlined?
the base for.
As outlined?
As previously
Are
presented.
you going to make a motion to accept the 8th grade program along with all the other stuff that I presented? Or is that separate, or is that?
Well, the
something that-
scheduling piece really doesn't,
There's no fiscal impact.
and there's, what are are there any substantive changes to the program other than we still have to look at whether the courses would be Unified
Nothing
Arts
beyond what I
experiences?
went over last week.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
everything that I presented last week is.
Right now, we're in a
Just a-
trimester mode with Unified Arts. Would this change that? Then if so, then maybe, if the board feels comfortable with what was described, if not, we can come
Yes,
back.
No, no, he,
The three of us
No, no,
know
no.
exactly. All three of us are nodding.
Quarters for the
quarters.
unifiers. If you're not familiar,
Yeah, it
the
is-
past several years, we've had our content courses on quarters,
Did anybody
and our
second
unified
my
arts
motion?
on trimesters.
Shouldn't be talking.
It gets crazy, I don't know if you remember, Derek, but in Londonderry, that's the way, at least when I taught there, that's the way it was. But anyway, so we've done that now for several years, and yes, we are looking to align both two quarters.
And
I still make my motion.
staff are generally supportive of that.
Yeah, I mean, the UAs are really the
More
ones that have had
operational
to, speaking of the student
But
system.
we need to, just like we
that's
need to accept the new
been the
course.
challenge,
at
is working
CHS.
with Redeker and.
I think once we accept the
Course.
courses,
They can implement
then
however they want.
the implementation.
That, I'm not focused on the
You guys.
implementation, I'm focused on accept, just like we did
Well, this is
the
a,
courses at
this is a
CHS.
programmatic change that needs to be made in order to get the best bang for the buck with that new course. So it'll mean revising the length of time that students stay in a given,
You're just going to terrorize the 7th graders.
in
Still
the
make the
Unified
motion.
Arts.
Second question?
Trying to move.
No one seconded it.
Nobody
You guys just
did.
went on to
Second.
discuss it.
Second.
Right
I
out.
said to Trish, nobody seconded.
Opportunity to second that one.
Oh, is that what it was?
Was.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
Any more discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What else can we get Dennis to motion?
Motion carries
Motion to
5-0.
adjourn.
Is there anything else you want to motion?
You might get a motion you don't want.
Motion
Any
to
more
adjourn?
motions?
It'll be, make the meeting next time really long.
Do you need anything else from us?
No, I just want to thank the board for consideration and some thoughtful discussion and dialogue. I think this is a first step. It's a significant one in this direction. It sends a signal to the schools and the staff that, you know, we're headed in this direction and,
She just sent me an email saying, what's the time?
we can, you know, significantly impact student learning, especially in the areas as it relates to appropriate use of technology, to research, to write, to, you know, engage in significant content reading, to engage in higher order thinking, and hopefully will allow us to start to target PD time, and then have to wrap around and start getting that district group together to flesh out a more significant vision, as both of you two have indicated, and get back to you either late this year or early next year. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, some policies for final approval. Board officers, BDB.
See you in the morning, at some point.
Thanks, Colin. Is there any change to this since the last reading?
Just the
Last
last sentence of the last
Oh,
paragraph.
yep.
We didn't have a first reading on this, we're just amending it, right?
We're amending it. That's why I put under revision and final reading.
I'll make a motion to approve BDB, as amended.
Second.
Trish, you gotta read this one carefully.
I know, I
Because it
know.
affects you.
Are we sure this is what we want?
Trish may vote against it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 500. CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. Another final reading. Same change, right?
Basically.
I'll make a motion
It
to
aligns this with the other one.
approve CBI as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 500. New business.
Yay, new
That's-
business.
We need to talk about adjusting the salary schedules for non-bargaining employees as approved in the operating budget. However, is that something that we need to do in non-public since it's salaries?
It's pay schedules.
As long as no,
Yeah, we're not.
If
the
it's
only
approved
issue is
in the
if there's
operating-
one person that's on a schedule.
Well, it probably
We
is,
should,
right?
we need to do that.
No, I think you're okay, as long as you don't, you can't talk about performance or anything. All you're doing is approving a schedule, so you're okay. Even if
It
there's
was
only one
approved in
person.
the operating budget, so why do we have to approve this then?
Because the schedule needs to be approved by the board on a particular day so that I can use it to generate the agreements and the pay rates for folks. It has to always comply with what the board's approved. So, yes, we budgeted. This is kind of a second part of that process where we approve.
So it's just a
what's
formality at
bud-
this point?
It's
This-
what's
yeah,
budgeted.
This reflects
This is
what
where
we
you're
have.
actually approving the compensation plan.
Right. And what I did was I had Michelle upload all of the information together, but if you want to pull out one particular schedule, like for the administrative assistance group, and then vote on the rest of it together, or however you want to do that, you can do that, but I had her just upload it all together, so.
We've already gone through, we can probably approve it all at once. If someone
Yeah,
has it.
the only thing I just wanted to highlight is we've got, in the budget as well as on these schedules, is a 1% adjustment for administrative assistants, for the custodial staff, for the facilities exempt custodial staff, the site facilities managers, and the building and grounds coordinator position, the paraprofessionals, all 1%, as well as the SAU staff. The only thing that's different is the schedule for the food service folks, food service technician and lead technicians, their 3% adjustment to the schedule. And then there's no adjustment to the administrative schedule, as was budgeted. Everything is frozen, there are no steps in this, so it specifically notes that steps were frozen as well as longevity was frozen, which all, again, ties together with what was budgeted. Now, the folks that are not on these schedules also would receive the same 1% adjustment, even though they have no pay schedule associated with their positions, because they are one here and there. Like, for instance, social worker, psychologist, monitors, tutors, those positions.
And are those factored into
The 1% adjustment has been budgeted for those folks as well.
We have a motion to approve the,
So I got just a quick discussion point here. The board has been fairly aggressive in our new contracts that we've signed. And maybe I don't see it, but I don't believe that the benefit summary on page 1 reflects the will of the board and the direction that we've asked those benefits to go in.
So are you looking to change those, John?
Well, I won't support this pay scale today, because we've discussed, we voted, we've given direction, we didn't receive, and now we're back at a pay scale where we're asking to approve it, and yet I don't believe it's a reflection of what
Where
the
we're
board
going.
has been asked to try to go to. So I don't know if we've hired employees. I tend to believe we have, because we hired a lot of employees that probably fell under this process in the past year. And you know, we were pretty structured in how we wanted that process to occur. And, you know, particularly, you know, a first-year person from this process is going to get 10 days vacation, they're going to get 15 days of sick, so there's 25 days. We're not going to believe they need any funeral leave, but if they need it, they need it. They get 11 holidays, so now they're 26 days, they get 3, so they're 30 days off for just coming to work for the district. And I'm sorry, that's just
You've got a good point.
not really where we have asked a lot of senior people to begin to take a look at. So that's just my issue.
A lot of the contract stuff changed before I got here. Was it mostly in the area of vacation days and sick days? The changes?
Well, it was what was it, a total of 40 days?
I think so.
They got a total of 40 days, and now it's a total, I think it's 25 days, and it doesn't accrue. It's use it or lose it, between vacation and sick. And there's no personal. Holidays are holidays, I guess. But
So is sick?
But with the people we're bringing in, these are people that are experienced, so they're coming in at senior level managements so they tend to have a little different in that structure. You know, I mean, in most businesses, it's 5 sick days. We're giving 15 to somebody walking in the door. You know, along with, you know, they get more sick days than they get vacation days. So, and then when they call out sick, we get, you know, what do you do? I mean, they get the days, so, and the days can accrue to 125 days. So I'm
I guess I would recommend, in that case, to separate the benefit from the pay scale and approve the pay scale, or vote on the pay scale tonight, and then have further discussions on any modifications we want to make to the benefits for next year.
No, these are non-contract employees, so we could technically change this if we wanted to, but it would obviously affect people who have been here for a long time, right?
Well, we do include that in their letter.
As was suggested by our attorney, when we hire people under certain benefit, they have an expectation of that benefit ongoing. So, John, your point about hiring new people over this last year and having this be the pay schedule that they're being hired into is valid. That's what their expectations are going forward. If we were to change their compensation, which includes pay and benefits, we would want to give them notice. I believe that the changes that we've made for the other groups that you're talking about, the administrators, specifically that pay program is for new hires going forward. So what Steve was saying is that aren't the benefits included in the statement we give to our employees every year? And yes, they are. So the benefits that they have available to them in their roles are listed on something called an employment summary. This is where we put their new rate, their daily hours, and what their benefits are currently. And we do that in writing every year, and we would do that going forward. So your suggestion, Dennis, to defer the discussion about benefits means we can't move forward with that summary piece where we provide notice to folks about what their benefits are going to be if the board wants to change benefits effective 7/1. My understanding is that the board is considering these changes as we move forward with new hires, but I didn't understand that we were going to change people that are currently employed. And so if you want me to put something else together, I've prepared lots of information. I can continue to prepare that information to consider for the board.
When do you usually do the presentation to the employees for next year?
We would be preparing them soon. We finish our evaluation process first, and then in the month of May is that time frame. So.
But there's nothing there's nothing that, other than anxiety, that holds up these letters from going out in June, if the board wants to work through a process, is there?
If the board's going to be changing benefits for the staff members who are maybe listening right now at home, they might want to know that as soon as possible. So that would be something the board should consider. If that was something that the board might be considering, we want to be completing that process as soon as possible, I would expect, and not delay the documents and our benefit plans going forward.
I also believe that it's that letter that prevents school year employees from collecting unemployment. So unless we could research, you vote, implement, and roll out in less than 2 months, you will have a bunch of school year employees that could actually go and collect unemployment because they will not have that letter of assurance for a position to come back to.
Well, Steve, I disagree with that. They can't go collect unemployment until you fire them. And until you fire them, they have a job.
Let me explain what we're talking about here a little bit. We have reasonable assurance as a public employee under the state of New Hampshire is required to be provided in advance of the last work day of the year.
Okay.
So the last school day. So we have until the last day that the person is required to work to provide them with notice in writing of our intent to hire them again after a period of a break. So that's what we're required to do, and we do that every year.
Okay.
So what we need to do is have them sign off and return it in advance of that last day, otherwise we're not going to be able to collect that document back. So we can't wait till the last day, logistically. But Steve's right, we do have to provide them with some sort of written notice, otherwise they are eligible to receive money over the summer, and that's the case with food service people, that's the case with every employee that we work with. We need to provide them with a document that gives them our commitment. It's called reasonable assurance prior to the last day of work.
So does the law say what has to be within that document?
They give us a sample. Primex has provided us with a sample, and we draft something that's similar to it. But when it comes to this group of employees we're talking about right now, our summary covers it, so we don't give them a separate letter. We don't give a summary to a substitute, for instance. We give them a reasonable assurance notice. Coaches, we give them reasonable assurance notices. So we have different formats of providing that written notice, but in this particular case, we use the employment summary, so we're not generating multiple documents.
So if we're going to have a detailed discussion on that, is that something that we need to do in non-public, or is that something we need to continue here?
I don't know how you would have that discussion without us giving you input on specific employees.
Well, it would be one of the things where the board would have a discussion and begin to try to give you ideas of what they're thinking. To just go out and try to determine what the board is thinking and trying to answer those questions wouldn't be productive. But if the board came up with 3 or 4 ideas of where they want changes, then those would be the avenues of research that would need to be done. Wouldn't that be
That's what we've
the
done
better
before.
logical way to do that?
But
Absolutely.
unlike what you've done, well, to date, you've done with the administrators, are you looking for this for new hires, or are you looking at changing everyone over?
Well, I think I think the question I have is, the answer to the question is yes and no. My question, though, on the table is that a discussion that we need to have in non-public that we're looking to make these changes, since they are changes, and then the board could have that discussion and be able to do that so that it doesn't go crazy that is probably going already, and then the answers come back and the board makes a vote, makes a decision, and then it gets communicated to the staff.
Do you think we could have that discussion without the issues?
We just have to be cautious to make sure that some of the examples of how this might impact employees, individual employees, or different groups of employees, we do have some groups that are very small in that some of them are 1 or 3. So depending on if we're talking about categories of employees, we might be indicating who we might be discussing. So we do, non-public would be...
Let's use this as an example, just an example. Let's say we decided that sick leave is 5 days, and it's not accruable.
So we have people that have sick time that they've currently earned.
Okay, well, then we'd have to iron that process out.
Right.
But we could say, boom, starting on whatever day you come back, your next set of benefits will be, if you had accrued 50 hours, you still have those 50 hours, but going forward, you get 5 days a year, and at the end of the year, if you haven't used them, they go away, but if you, for whatever reason, you may need more than 5, the people that may have that will accrue those, and they use them up as they use them up.
So that's not a non-public discussion, because that's not
Well,
an
it's not now.
individual type. That kind of a discussion, obviously, is something that this could be done in public.
You know, so I mean, you know, again, I think that I think as part of our discussion in these areas was to determine because what is the liability to the district when somebody gets to 125 days and then leaves?
None.
For all of these employees that we're talking about, there is no cash payout available.
There's no contract.
The administrative group, which is the group that you've changed going forward, that was the group, and that was only school administrators that received a portion of their sick time as part of their separation at the time that they left. But a person, say for instance, that's a custodian who's got, 60 days on the books even, that hasn't used it, been with us for a really long time, if they retire, that doesn't get paid out to them. It disappears at that point, it closes.
I mean,
We
part of
don't
me-
have a sick bank for that group, so it's not like they pay into something that
Yeah, I mean-
others can access.
Part of me looks at this is that after 90 days, they move into long-term disability. So why do they need to bank 125 days? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. To have 125 days when after 90 days you've moved into long-term disability.
Because you can collect full salary for 125 days before you go to long-term disability.
But long-term disability is normally a reflection of if you made $1,000, if you make $1,000, long-term disability would be $666. And if you take out the taxes and everything out of $1,000, it's fairly close. And that's why, because they have to pay taxes on that long-term disability dollars. That's why it's 66%.
No, I understand.
So the thing is, it's an equivalent amount of money.
It's meant to be, but because the district pays for that benefit for the employee, yes, they receive 66 2/3, but they pay taxes on that when they actually file their taxes.
It's not paid by
It's
the
not
employee.
It's not considered,
It's not a post-tax contribution by the employee.
so it doesn't really keep them whole in that regard. Yeah,
Yeah, they also have to pay retirement on that as well.
if they're eligible.
If they're
for that,
eligible.
yeah.
So is there any information we want to get from the administration to have a discussion on this later, or?
The only request I would have is, if the board is considering a major change to benefits, we owe it to our staff to give them as much advance notice as possible, and which groups are being. I will tell you, even today, I got a question from a staff person, not an administrator, questioning what changes might be made. You have an entire employee population that is on pins and needles, wondering what's going on. We owe it to them to give them advice of where you're coming from.
I'm going to abstain from any vote anyway, so.
You have to.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to debate the merits of anything. I was just trying to find a solution moving forward without debating whether it's right or wrong or good or bad, so.
So if we're not doing the payout, what are we accomplishing and changing?
That's a good point.
Well, I think the biggest key is that how many employees are we discussing in this group?
About 80.
So you have 80 employees that have 15 days of sick days.
Oh, actually, you're talking about just full-timers.
Well, whatever
Part-time
gets,
employees only get 5 days. If they're school year part-time.
give me a
they get
rough
5.
estimate of how many days we're looking at
I
between the two
actually
groups.
can give you a real number if you want to
Okay.
keep going. I'll give you a real number. Just give me a minute to calculate it. $26 out of our 350
26.
employees about total.
26
26 full-time employees who get 15 days of sick because they would be year-round.
Excluding
Full-timers.
administrators. This is the groups we're
Yeah, I'm not
about.
talking
Okay.
about the administrators, I'm
So-
just talking about
so-
the folks that are affected by these schedules.
390 days
15.
that have to be, somebody else has to cover those days when they're out? Meaning you have to hire a substitute pair, or bring in a substitute pair, or coverage,
Paras are all
or...
part-time, so none of the paras are eligible for this. They get 5 days of sick.
It's mostly
It's custodians.
top 3 groups and custodians, right?
Administrative assistants.
So when these
Some
days are
facilities
used,
managers.
what is the cost to the district? Somebody
Zero.
calls out 6 out of this group of people, and does it just, there's no coverage, they're just out sick, and we have to make up the coverage the next day? People are working 5 people are doing, or 4 people are doing the job of 5 people? How do we cover those?
We only
those
bring in
days?
substitutes for custodial staff when it's needed and for administrative assistants when it's needed. So it's not every time. I don't know what percentage it would be, honestly, because I don't manage the subs that way, but I know that we do have a short list of substitutes, in certain roles. If there's one administrative assistant in a department and somebody's out, we bring in a substitute to cover that role.
In the case of custodians, their first preference is to have a couple of people work an extra hour
So-
rather than bringing in, because it's actually less money.
So I guess my question is, out of the 390 days, how many of them were used? Were used as sick days?
I honestly don't have a balance. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare for this discussion. I
Because
didn't know that we were gonna
if you had,
discuss this.
if it was 390 days, okay, and 350 days were used,
Yeah.
okay.
It's not close to that.
that, everybody uses them a little bit differently or whatever. My feeling on that would be, see, I would much rather see it be reduced to 5 days and whatever savings is made from that in dollars be used to cover an increase in income. So they lose, so you get an idea. They used half the days. Let's say 390 became 200 days, and the value of 206 days became, it costs, $10,000 to cover that. Then you take that and you find a way to, after you pay all your taxes and whatever, you find a way to distribute that money across. I'm not saying take the money away and take the benefit away. I'm saying if it's not being used, then it's a non-issue, okay? Then maybe it can just stay the way it is. But if it is being used, again, it's the same key. I think you want, just like when we talk with the teachers, we want our teachers in front of the students. We should want those other staff here at the school when we want them to be here, because they know what they're doing. And, things occur. But, you go back to the thing, for 30 days, it's just, it's just a lot of days when, it's almost double what you would see in the private sector.
For me, it's more of a perception thing. 15 sick days is a lot of sick days. But on the flip side, 10 days vacation for 1 to 5 years is a little low too. So I'd even say drop it to 5 sick days, but give them 15 vacation days for the first 5 years.
15 vacation days for the first year is a lot.
Is it?
Yeah, 1 to 5, 10 is pretty much standard in the private sector.
I've always gotten 15.
5 sick days is standard.
5 sick days is standard, yeah. I get 15 vacation days, 5 sick days. So I thought that was pretty standard.
Do you have an attendance report of utilization?
I'm trying to find where it is.
It's under your resources. If you go to find, look under my approval for that.
HR
And
payroll.
the holidays are the holidays because schools are
Who's on
closed,
anyway?
so.
Oh, there it is.
11 days is kind of tricky, too.
Where it's called?
Yeah, that's about right.
Is it called audit?
3
I mean,
persons.
I would be easy, I think it'd be easier to just, you take away the personal days and you
Add
leave them,
vacation.
and you just leave them as 10 sick days or 10 vacation days and 15 sick days, and they can use them however I guess they want to use them, but I think that we've had this discussion before, that they want them to be called personal days and they want them to be called sick days.
Right.
So maybe that you go
Because you
to
use
1 day
for
per
purpose.
month, and that still gives you back to your 15 days. You just give them 1 day per month and accumulate it.
Still a lot.
It's still a lot. I mean, it's just, still a lot.
I mean, just put it into dollars. If you go down to 5 sick days just go in the middle of the charts as far as rates of pay, you'd be saving about $31,000 a year.
But we're not backfilling, so it's not real savings, right? Is that what you're saying?
Most of those positions are not covered by a substitute.
But you might pay overtime.
I'm just
It might be-
talking
Might be.
Yeah.
what their rate of pay is.
Yeah.
And the amount of hours.
Technically, that's the benefit, technically, yeah.
I am too. I think we
You're paying them $31,000 in sick pay, and then you have to pay
we
someone
need-
else to do
we
their
need to go
job.
back. I think, quite frankly, just let us know what information you want, and we'll have to come back at the next meeting, because we're,
I just
Neither
don't
one
have
of
the
us is
reports. I
at
can't see
all
the screen.
prepared
It's
for
too
this.
late, and I will pull together whatever it is that you want me to pull together.
Well, I'm only one voice, there's still 3 other members that can approve the plan.
Do you need this tonight?
It would be nice. This is the meeting, the first meeting in April, to keep our regular schedule, and based on my transition and Steve's transition, we were trying to stay in our normal
And we're not meeting for 2
patterns,
weeks
but
after this.
well, that's the problem, and I will tell you, any change you make to what you're talking about is going to be major systems effort that Deb and I and Christine would have to spend time figuring out how to do it.
I'm trying to...
The longer you wait, given the 2 of us are leaving...
Yeah, this is the
it's
thing, is what I'm
really
trying to
tight.
do is I'm trying to prepare for open enrollment right now, and making sure that I have the open enrollment, because we do everything electronically, and there's no one else that's cross-trained in that but me. So I'm starting the process of training and documenting that, and that's what I'm kind of trying to spend my time on, to make sure we have continuity of services from the HR office. But, you know, if you need me to go out and get quotes and everything like I did last year, I can certainly start that process. It just takes time. So tell me as soon as you can, and I'll do what I can do before I go.
Given the existing workload that these two have and the efforts that they're going to be putting into the transition plan, it would greatly aid my mental health if we basically passed this and kept it, and opened it up for conversation in the fall.
Yeah,
Quite honestly, it really is a capacity issue, and it's a serious conversation that, you know.
It's a
should
very
take some
valid
time.
conversation
It is.
that he brings up, and I am concerned about it. But I think we should have been discussing this prior to this
A
date.
little last minute.
But I am concerned about tabling it to the fall, because then we get busy with budget season and everything, so.
It'd have to be something you have to kick around in the summer months.
Yeah. I think it would be tough to handle this change, which is going to be pretty big, I'm assuming, and then have to deal with a rollover in BA and a HR director all at the same time.
Quite honestly, with negotiations in the fall. And then budget.
What are you chuckling over there for?
I put my head down when he said negotiations. I forgot about that.
I'm just trying to cheer him up. And the reality is, people in a small SAU office cover a lot of territory, and when you're having this significant a transition,
I think that this is a major discussion that we don't want to make a quick decision on. And this board has always taken that position on things like that. And to some degree, you could argue we've been having this conversation, but not for this particular set of people. I hear you, John, and I'd like to have this discussion over the summer months so that we're not here again next year saying the same thing.
It's a bad time. Do we have a motion there
What motion are we on?
to approve the pay schedule? Do
I say, I'll make the motion to approve the
we have a second?
pay schedule.
I'll second.
and can we ask to have I'm sorry. Oh,
Discussion, no discussion, discussion.
No,
You can talk.
we're in discussion right now.
I was going to say, if we're going to ask Michelle to put in for a August list to get back to this conversation.
Okay.
And whatever it is that you need for information, I'll try to help to prepare that for the next
Thank you.
person.
Thank you.
So that, and I know what you're
appreciate
talking about, attendance records, you want to get a sense of utilization, balances.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Gotta vote one way.
John, you're taking my usual stance.
I am. What is it with this line
We're
tonight?
trading
This
places,
line
John.
tonight.
Only 2 people vote for it.
Yeah, but there were.
How'd you vote, Brian?
I haven't.
What, you lay down me?
Haven't come
It's in
yet.
a quandary.
Where's the vote right now?
Which means they all
Two.
pass.
201, so.
Oh, 201, yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong, John. I'm just saying that we just
You
don't
picked a
have
bad
time to
time.
really discuss this in a very thoughtful and,
No, I'm with you. It just
Hurts.
I get frustrated when it's time sensitive. And it's been, something that we've been discussing, maybe beating around the bush enough that we just didn't have enough information to do that, so. I'll give it a yes. So that it gets approved and can move forward.
No. Under the time restraints in the situation, then I'll vote yes also. With the assurance that we do come back in August.
Yeah.
I'm not changing.
Motion
Well,
passes
you could vote
401.
for all of them, but
You gotta break it out.
Graduation date approval.
There's another document.
Oh, I think that was more for FYI, right?
I think that Deb had brought that, said that those were not changing, the
was that?
longevity and the administrative.
Yeah, that was just for information. The other schedules refer to the longevity, and I didn't know if you all had the longevity schedule. And then the administrative schedule, which was not proposed to be changed in accordance with the budget.
Right.
So I just wanted you to have them, that's all.
Any
I
questions?
would
on
like
that?
to have a discussion on that
On the second
second
document?
page in non-public
Okay,
tonight, if we could, just for a few seconds.
I think we can do that.
I guess we have a non-public.
Okay, school calendar. We need a graduation date?
The graduation date is scheduled tentatively, given the weather. We may have to adjust it in given years if we have tremendous numbers of school cancellation days. In this case, we have had 3 blizzard bag days, which means they counted all as school days, and as of today, we are on track for a June 14th graduation. If we were to miss one day, we would either have to write a letter to the commissioner indicating we're well over the required 990 hours, and ask permission to hold it on the 14th anyway, which is apparently what we've done in the past. So,
We've also
it's Saturday
counted
school.
senior project night.
Yes.
Given that we're so far over the hours, the board felt that it was a required activity, it was at night, we asked the commissioner to count that as a day, and I think he's done that in the past. And we've done Saturday as well, a Saturday for seniors.
So I think we're in pretty good shape.
What's the last day of school for everyone else? 21st?
21st right now. And the 24th would be the last day of the school year for teachers.
So I'll make a motion to approve that calendar.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Just on a quick sidebar, when are we going to have our discussion on blizzard bags?
Well, given we can have one, we would be required to have one if the contract had passed. So where we left it was this year was kind of a pilot and the use of 3 days. I mean,
I think we should have a discussion about it so that any board members can express their positive concerns or negative concerns on the blizzard bags, that then will give the administration a time over the summer to
okay. Then come
gather
back
some
with a
information and
proposal.
present it to the board before we start the next school year, so that we, teachers and administrators, will all be on the page of whether or not we thought it was a successful campaign and should move forward for another year.
Okay.
So we should add it for sometime in May then?
I'm sorry?
Sometime in May, we can have the discussion then?
In the summer?
Before summer, I think you wanted it, right?
It's your job to figure out, man.
But you said before
Our
summer,
list
right?
this big, we just have to have, I think you just gotta, you're having an administrative, he's having an administrative retreat on August 15th, right? Or when is your, Dr. Hart, when is your meeting with your staff in August?
About that week or the week after.
All right, so we probably need to have a determination
Before that.
before that, so that it's something that they can plan for or not plan for, or
I would say in the
whatever.
late June, July.
Can you add it to the bottom there?
Okay, I'll put June,
That should do.
July, and then we'll, okay.
Thank you. Okay, anonymous donation?
We need a vote on that.
Make a
it for?
motion to approve, to accept the $1,000
Graduation
anonymous
day.
donation.
No, graduation day, you didn't vote on that.
Oh, we have a second, we just didn't get a vote.
Aye.
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 Now I'll make a motion to accept the $1,000 donation.
Said no to the manifest.
Vote on the calendar was 600.
Trish had a question.
Dennis voted twice.
I voted 3 times if it moved.
What is this donation for?
Anonymous
a $1,000 donation for the CHS Student Council Spring Fling.
I still make the motion.
Go ahead. Do we have a second on this? Second. Any discussion?
This is an easy one.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
You should have to vote with.
Passes 5-0-0. Any questions
You
on the
know,
manifest?
I like to keep you guys on your toes. It's getting
Yes, Trish has a
late.
manifest question, but I don't think.
Oh. You
But
lost Mr.
our
Martin.
BA has
Steve?
left the building.
Okay, went
He went to get his power cord.
Oh, he thought he was gonna make it.
Computer.
Do we want to pause until he gets back? Public input? Can you dance until Steve gets back?
There's Steve.
I have a question.
We have a question on the manifest.
Yes.
I have a question on this Pearson Education. You have in there Common Core. What was that? Was that curriculum or was it?
What's the account? Okay, that's a federal fund, regular education supplies. So this is coming out of a grant, and it's supplies for students
Or third.
apparently related to the Common Core.
Then you just,
So most likely curriculum related? No?
Yeah, it would have it's regular education related. I think Common Core is just probably a descriptive of what they're buying.
Anything else? All right. We'll be entering non-public session under RSA 91-A311. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee effective one has a right to a meeting, to request that meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely
Thank you,
affect
Carolyn.
adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
So made.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Non-public.
Derek, you went 9 minutes on, pretty impressive.
Nice.
Well, this could go long. Hold on. I don't know what they have planned. We could be out of here by now.
Nice.
I don't think so.
That's correct.
what? Yes.
Are these off or?
Not yet.
Does he know?
I will make a motion to approve the non-public minutes as printed.
Second that.
I didn't either.